When Riley knocks on a stranger's door with nothing but soup and a rain-soaked heart, she unknowingly awakens a man lost to betrayal and sets off a chain of second chances that neither of them saw coming. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain pounded against the windows of Miller's Cafe as Riley Monroe wiped down the counters for what felt like the 100th time that day. Her hands were red and chapped from cleaning, but she kept going. She had to. With 3 jobs and a teenage brother to take care of, stopping wasn't an option. "Riley, honey, can you take this delivery?" asked Martha, her cousin who owned the cafe. "It's for Dorian House." Riley looked up, her ponytail swinging as she turned. "Dorian House? That place at the end of Cypress Road?" Martha nodded, lowering her voice. "The Recluse. Nobody ever sees him. Just leaves the money in a lockbox by the gate." "Well, today he's getting soup and bread," Riley said with a shrug, taking the paper bag. She didn't have time for town gossip, not when the electric bill was due tomorrow. "Be careful," Martha warned. "They say he's strange, dangerous even." Riley rolled her eyes. "I've got bigger problems than some rich guy who doesn't like company." Outside, her old scooter sputtered to life on the 3rd try. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through her thin jacket. Just another thing to deal with, like the leak in their apartment ceiling, like her brother Jamie's school fees, like the constant worry that kept her awake at night. The road to Dorian House was long and winding, bordered by tall cypress trees that seemed to watch her as she passed. The iron gates were intimidating, tall and black against the grey sky. Riley pressed the intercom button, not expecting an answer. To her surprise, the gates slowly swung open. She drove up the gravel driveway, looking at the massive house that seemed to grow out of the shadows. It was beautiful in a sad way, like something from another time. Riley parked her scooter and ran through the rain to the front door, the paper bag clutched in her hand. She knocked 3 times, loud and clear. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly the heavy wooden door opened. The man who stood there wasn't what Riley expected. He wasn't old or scary or strange-looking. He was tall, with dark hair streaked with grey at the temples. His eyes were deep blue and startled, like he couldn't believe someone was actually at his door. This was Caleb Dorian, the man the town whispered about, the man no one had seen in 15 years. "Delivery from Miller's Cafe," Riley said simply, holding out the bag. "Soup and bread." Caleb stared at her for a long moment. What surprised him most wasn't that she was pretty, though she was in a natural, unpolished way. What surprised him was that she looked him straight in the eyes. No fear, no curiosity, just a direct gaze and a slight impatience. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough from disuse. He took the bag, his fingers brushing against hers. The simple human contact made him flinch slightly. Riley nodded. "Enjoy your soup. It's good on rainy days." And with that, she turned and ran back to her scooter, not lingering for a tip or trying to peek inside his house. The rain clung to her ponytail as she started the engine. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her leave. For the first time in 15 years, he had opened his door to another person, and for the first time in just as long, he felt something stir inside him. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. The next day, he placed another order. Riley wasn't surprised when Martha handed her another delivery for Dorian House. "Looks like you made an impression," Martha teased. "He probably just likes the soup," Riley replied, though she wondered if there was more to it. This time, when she arrived, the gates opened immediately. She made her way to the front door, knocked and waited. The door opened faster today, as if he'd been waiting. "Miller's Cafe," she announced, holding out the new delivery. "Thank you," Caleb said, taking the bag. Today he noticed more about her, the dark circles under her eyes, the small scar above her right eyebrow, the way her jacket was too thin for the weather. "You're not what people say," Riley blurted out, then looked embarrassed. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "What do they say?" "That you're strange, dangerous, some kind of monster." His face hardened. "Maybe I am." Riley shook her head. "No, you're just sad." Then she turned and left, leaving Caleb stunned at her directness. For the next 2 weeks, the pattern continued. Every day Caleb ordered something from the cafe. Every day Riley delivered it. Their interactions were brief, but each time something shifted between them. A look held a moment longer. A question asked. A small piece of themselves revealed. "Why do you never leave this place?" Riley asked one day as she handed him a bag of muffins. "I have everything I need here," Caleb answered. "No one has everything they need inside four walls," Riley countered. Caleb almost smiled. "You don't mince words, do you?" "Can't afford to," she replied. On a particularly stormy afternoon, Riley arrived at Dorian House soaked to the skin. Her scooter had stalled halfway up the drive, and she'd had to walk the rest of the way. When Caleb opened the door, genuine concern crossed his face. "You're drenched." "It's fine," Riley said, teeth chattering. "Just some rain." "Come inside," he said, stepping back from the door. "Just until the storm passes." Riley hesitated. This was crossing a line, entering the mysterious Dorian house. But the rain was freezing, and something in his eyes told her she could trust him. "Just until the storm passes," she agreed. The inside of the mansion was like something from another world. High ceilings, artwork on the walls, furniture that looked expensive but unused. There was a stillness to the place, as if it had been frozen in time. "You live here alone?" Riley asked, following Caleb to a large kitchen where he put down the food bag. "Yes," he said simply. He pulled out a clean towel from a drawer and handed it to her. "For your hair." Riley patted her dripping hair dry. "Must get lonely?" Caleb didn't answer. Instead, he busied himself making tea, his movements precise and careful, as if he rarely performed such simple tasks. "Why do you deliver food in this weather?" he asked, changing the subject. "Surely it's not worth it." Riley's face tightened. "I need the money. I've got bills to pay, a brother to take care of." "Your brother?" "Jamie. He's 16. Our parents died 3 years ago. Car accident." Riley said it flatly, the way you say things that hurt too much to put emotion into. Caleb placed a cup of tea in front of her. "I'm sorry," Riley shrugged. "Life happens. You either deal with it or you don't." She looked pointedly around the empty mansion. "Some people choose not to." Her words hit Caleb like a slap, because she was right. He had chosen not to deal with his pain. Instead, he'd locked himself away from the world. "I don't know anything about me," he said, his voice hardening. "I know you've been hiding for 15 years, Riley replied. "Everyone knows that much." "And do they know why?" Caleb asked, his blue eyes intense. Riley shook her head. "They say you were betrayed by your business partner and your fiancé." Caleb laughed bitterly. "Betrayed, such a simple word for having your life destroyed." The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of rain beating against the windows. Riley sipped her tea, waiting. She sensed there was more he wanted to say, needed to say, after 15 years of silence. "I built a tech company from nothing," Caleb finally said. "Working 18-hour days for years. My partner David was my best friend since college. My fiancée Rebecca was the woman I thought I'd spend my life with." His voice grew distant. "Then one day, I discovered they'd been working together, behind my back, stealing my designs, planning to force me out of my own company." "That's awful," Riley said quietly. "It gets worse," Caleb continued. "They were also having an affair for 2 years. While I was working myself to death, they were—" He trailed off, the pain still raw even after all this time. "So you just gave up?" Riley asked. "Let them win?" Caleb's eyes flashed. "I didn't give up. I walked away. There's a difference." "Not much of one from where I'm standing," Riley said. She stood up, putting down her empty cup. "The rain's stopping. I should go." Caleb walked her to the door in silence. Just as she was about to leave, he asked, "Will you come again tomorrow?" Riley looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the loneliness behind his walls of anger and hurt. "I go where the deliveries take me," she said. But they both knew she'd be back. That night, Riley couldn't stop thinking about Caleb Dorian, about the sadness in his eyes, about the way he'd retreated from the world instead of fighting back. Meanwhile, in his empty mansion, Caleb stood at the window, watching the place where Riley's scooter had disappeared down the road. For the first time in 15 years, he'd told someone about his past. For the first time in 15 years, he'd felt something other than numbness or anger. The next day, he placed another order, and when Riley arrived, he was waiting at the door before she even knocked. "Would you like to come in?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Riley knew she should say no, this wasn't part of her job. And she had so many other things to worry about. The rent increase notice she'd received that morning, Jamie's trouble at school, the second job she was about to lose because the store was closing. But something in Caleb's eyes made her nod. Just for a few minutes. Those few minutes turned into an hour. They sat on the porch watching the clouds move across the sky. Riley told him about her struggles, honest, unfiltered accounts of trying to keep her little family afloat. Caleb listened, really listened, in a way no one had in a long time. When it was time for her to leave, he asked the question that had been building since the first day she knocked on his door. "Would you ever stay for a while? Not just a delivery, not just a few minutes." Riley's breath caught. She saw the hope in his eyes, the longing, and it scared her. She had enough people depending on her already. "No," she said firmly. "I can't fix whatever it is you're running from." Caleb's face fell, but he nodded. "I understand." As Riley rode home that day, she told herself she'd done the right thing. She couldn't take on someone else's demons. She had enough of her own. But that night, as she looked at the past due bills spread across her tiny kitchen table, she wondered if she'd made a mistake. Not because of Caleb's wealth, though that thought had crossed her mind, but because for the first time in 3 years, someone had actually listened to her problems instead of adding to them. In his mansion, Caleb sat in his study, thinking about Riley's words. "I can't fix whatever it is you're running from." She was right, it wasn't her job to fix him, but maybe, just maybe, it was time he tried to fix himself. The next morning, he made 2 decisions that would change everything. First, he called an old contact, one of the few who hadn't betrayed him, and asked for information about Riley Monroe. Second, he picked up a pencil and began to sketch for the first time in 15 years. The lines were rough at first, his hand unpracticed. But slowly the image took shape, Riley with her determined eyes and no-nonsense ponytail standing in the rain at his doorstep. The day everything started to change. 3 days passed without Caleb placing an order from Miller's Cafe. Riley told herself she was relieved. One less delivery to make in the rain, one less complicated situation to deal with. But every time the bell above the cafe door jingled, she found herself looking up, half expecting to see an order for Dorian House. "No delivery today?" Martha asked on the 3rd day, noticing Riley checking the order board. "Guess not," Riley said, trying to sound casual. Maybe he got tired of soup. That evening, Riley pulled up to the apartment building she and Jamie called home. It wasn't much. The paint was peeling, the elevator worked only half the time, and the neighbors were too loud. But it was all they could afford. She was exhausted after her shift at the cafe and then 4 hours at the convenience store, across town. All she wanted was to collapse on the couch, but she knew Jamie would be waiting for dinner. As she trudged up the 3 flights of stairs, Riley mentally calculated how much food was left in the fridge and how many days until payday. The math didn't add up well. When she opened the apartment door, she found Jamie sitting at their small table, a strange expression on his face. "What's wrong?" Riley asked, immediately alert. "Did something happen at school?" Jamie shook his head. "Someone came by earlier. Left this." He pointed to a large box on the counter. Riley approached it cautiously. "What is it?" "Open it," Jamie said, his eyes wide. Riley lifted the lid and gasped. Inside was a brand new laptop, the expensive kind she could never afford, along with several comic books and a note that simply read, "For Jamie Monroe, no strings attached." "Who left this?" Riley demanded, suddenly suspicious. "The delivery guy didn't say," Jamie replied. "But Riley, do you know what this means? I can finally do my school projects properly. No more staying late at the library using their ancient computers." Riley frowned. This had to be from Caleb. No one else would do something like this. But how did he know about Jamie? About their situation? And more importantly, why? "We're sending it back," she decided. Jamie's face fell. "What? Why?" "It's exactly what I need." Because we don't take handouts, Riley said firmly. Especially not from strangers. Is it from that man you deliver food to? Jamie asked, suddenly understanding. The one Martha says you've been talking about? Riley felt her cheeks warm. I haven't been talking about him, and yes, I think it's from him. Then it's not from a stranger, Jamie argued. And I really need this laptop, Riley. You know I do. Riley looked at her brother's hopeful face and felt her resolve weakening. Jamie was a good kid who never complained about their situation. He deserved something nice for once. I'll think about it, she said eventually, but I need to talk to him first. The next morning, Riley drove her scooter to Dorian House without a delivery as her excuse. The gates opened as she approached, as if Caleb had been watching for her. When she reached the front door, it swung open before she could knock. Caleb stood there, a cautious hope in his eyes. You came back, he said simply. We need to talk, Riley replied, her voice firm despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. Caleb stepped aside to let her in. Today, the house seemed different. Curtains were open, letting in sunlight. A few rooms away, Riley could hear the sound of someone vacuuming. You have staff now, she asked, surprised. I called the housekeeping service that used to maintain the place, Caleb explained. They come twice a week. They walk to a sunroom at the back of the house, overlooking gardens that had clearly been neglected for years, but were still beautiful in their wild way. The laptop, Riley said, getting straight to the point. And the comic books. How did you know about Jamie and why? Caleb looked slightly embarrassed. I asked about you. My lawyer knows people in town. You investigated me. Riley's eyes flashed. With anger. Not like that, Caleb said quickly. I just wanted to help. After what you told me about struggling to make ends meet, about your brother. I didn't tell you so you'd feel sorry for us, Riley interrupted. I don't feel sorry for you, Caleb replied. I admire you. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Riley. You took on adult responsibilities when you were still practically a kid yourself. Riley looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. We don't need charity. It's not charity, Caleb insisted. Think of it as an investment in Jamie's future. That's just a fancy word for the same thing, Riley argued. I can't accept it. Why not? Because... Riley struggled to articulate the feeling in her chest. Because then I'd owe you something. Caleb shook his head. You wouldn't owe me anything. That's not how gifts work. In my experience, everything comes with strings attached, Riley said quietly. They sat in silence for a moment, the spring sunlight warming the room. Finally, Caleb spoke. When I was building my company, I created a scholarship program for promising students who couldn't afford college. Not because I wanted anything from them, but because I remembered what it was like to struggle, to have potential but no resources. He paused. I closed the program when I withdrew from the world. It's one of many things I regret. Riley looked at him, really looked at him, and saw sincerity in his eyes. Let the gift be for Jamie, Caleb said softly. Not for you, not because of you, just because he deserves a chance. Riley thought about her brother's face when he saw the laptop, the pure joy, the possibilities it represented. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, she agreed. For Jamie, but nothing else. Caleb smiled, and Riley was struck by how it transformed his face, softening the lines of sadness that had become so familiar. As she was leaving, Caleb stopped her. Would you both come for dinner sometime? I could have food brought in, nothing fancy. Riley hesitated. This was different from their brief encounters. This was intentional. This was choosing to spend time with him. I'll think about it, she said, not committing. But they both knew she would come. That night, after her shift at the convenience store, Riley found an envelope in her locker. Inside was a notice that Jamie's school fees for the rest of the year had been paid in full by an anonymous donor. Her first instinct was anger. She'd specifically told Caleb no more gifts. But as she drove home on her sputtering scooter, the anger faded into confusion. And beneath that, something else, a warmth she didn't want to name. When she arrived home, Jamie was already asleep, the new laptop closed beside him on the bed. Riley gently moved it to his desk and pulled his blanket up to his shoulders. He looked younger in sleep, reminding her of the little boy he'd been before their parents died, before the weight of the world fell on both their shoulders. The next day, Riley called Caleb from the cafe during her break. "The school fees," she said without preamble when he answered. "That was you." "Yes," Caleb admitted without apology. "I told you no more gifts." "You told me the laptop could be for Jamie," Caleb corrected. "This is also for Jamie." Riley wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny that the payment had lifted an enormous burden from her shoulders, a burden that had kept her awake at night for months. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice softer now. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Because I've spent 15 years helping no one, caring about no one. And then you knocked on my door." The simple honesty of his answer silenced any further objections Riley might have had. "Dinner," she said finally. "Tomorrow night. Jamie and I will come for dinner." The next evening, Riley and Jamie arrived at Dorian House, both feeling out of place but for different reasons. Riley was nervous about what this step meant, while Jamie was simply awestruck by the mansion. "You didn't tell me it was like a castle," he whispered as they walked up to the front door. "It's just a big house," Riley replied, though she had to admit it was impressive. Caleb greeted them warmly, seeming both nervous and pleased. He'd clearly made an effort. His hair was neatly combed, and he wore a button-down shirt that looked new. "Welcome," he said, ushering them inside. "I thought we could eat in the kitchen. It's less formal." The kitchen, while still obviously expensive, did have a cozier feel than Riley expected. A table was set for 3, and delicious smells filled the air. "You cooked?" Riley asked, surprised. Caleb looked embarrassed. "I tried. I found some old recipes. I used to cook before." He gestured vaguely, indicating his years of isolation. "Before you turned into a hermit?" Jamie asked bluntly. "Jamie," Riley scolded, but Caleb laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise even him. "Yes, exactly. Before I turned into a hermit." The dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Jamie, after getting over his initial shyness, had a million questions about Caleb's tech background. Riley watched with growing amazement as Caleb patiently explained concepts, clearly enjoying the conversation. "So you invented the security system that's like every office building now?" Jamie asked, impressed. Caleb nodded. "The original version, yes. I'm sure they've improved it since then." "Why did you stop inventing stuff?" Jamie asked with the direct curiosity of a teenager. A shadow passed over Caleb's face. "Sometimes people take what isn't theirs. I decided I didn't want to create things for others to steal anymore." "So you just gave up?" Jamie pressed. Riley tensed, about to intervene, but Caleb answered honestly. "I did," he admitted. "And looking back, that might have been a mistake." After dinner, Jamie asked to explore the house and Caleb agreed, pointing out rooms he might find interesting, including a home theater and a game room that hadn't been used in years. Left alone with Riley, Caleb seemed suddenly nervous again. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Both of you." "Jamie loves the laptop," Riley said. "He hasn't stopped talking about it." "I'm glad," Caleb replied. Then, after a pause, "There's something I want to show you." He led her to a room she hadn't seen before, a studio filled with drawings and paintings. Most were covered with sheets, but on an easel in the center was a charcoal sketch of Riley, standing in the rain at his doorstep. "You drew this?" she asked, stunned by the detail, the way he'd captured her expression. Determined but tired, strong but vulnerable. "I used to draw all the time," Caleb explained. "I stopped when I stopped everything else. This is the first thing I've drawn in 15 years. Riley was speechless. The idea that she had inspired him to return to something he loved after so long was overwhelming. "It's beautiful," she said finally. "You're beautiful," Caleb replied, quietly. Then, seeing her discomfort, he quickly added, "I mean, you're a good subject for drawing." Riley smiled despite herself. "You're not very good at this, are you?" "At what?" "Talking to people. Being normal." Caleb laughed again, that same surprised sound. "No, I'm really not. 15 years of silence will do that to you." They stood there looking at the drawing, a comfortable silence between them. Then Riley asked the question that had been on her mind all evening. "Are you coming back to the world? Now is that what this is?" Caleb considered her question seriously. I don't know. For so long the world has been a place I didn't want to be part of. But lately... Lately what? Lately I've had a reason to open the door, he said, looking at her with an intensity that made her heart skip. Riley took a step back, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. I should find Jamie. We need to get home soon. As they were leaving, Jamie clutching a stack of vintage comic books Caleb had given him, Caleb stopped Riley with a gentle touch on her arm. Will you come back? He asked, his voice carrying a vulnerability that tugged at something inside her. Riley knew she should say no. This was becoming complicated, and complicated was the last thing she needed in her already difficult life. But looking at his face, hopeful and afraid all at once, she couldn't make herself say the words. Yes, she said instead. We'll come back. Over the next few weeks, visits to Dorian House became a regular part of Riley and Jamie's life, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to talk or watch a movie in the home theater. Jamie began bringing homework, spreading out on the big dining room table while Caleb helped him with math and science. For Riley, watching the two of them together was both heartwarming and terrifying. Jamie was getting attached, and if she was honest with herself, so was she. One evening, after Jamie had fallen asleep watching a movie, Caleb and Riley sat on the porch, looking at the stars. He's a great kid, Caleb said. You've done an amazing job with him. I've done my best, Riley replied. But it's been hard. After our parents died, I had to be both sister and parent. Sometimes I worry I'm failing at both. You're not, Caleb assured her. Anyone can see how much he respects you, how much he loves you. Riley felt tears threatening and blinked them away. What about you? She asked, changing the subject. Do you ever think about going back to your company? Taking back what was yours? Caleb's face hardened slightly. The company went public years ago. David and Rebecca made millions. They're probably still running it together. So you've just been hiding while they live their lives? Riley couldn't keep the challenge from her voice. When you put it that way, it sounds pathetic, Caleb admitted. It is pathetic, Riley said bluntly. You're brilliant, Caleb. You could start something new, something better. For a moment, Caleb looked angry. Then his expression softened. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time. As Riley rode home that night, Jamie sleeping against her back on the scooter, she realized something had shifted. Caleb Dorian was no longer just the mysterious recluse she delivered food to. He was becoming something more. A friend, a support, maybe even... She cut off the thought before it could fully form. Getting involved with Caleb would be complicated in ways she couldn't afford. She had Jamie to think about. She had bills to pay. She had a life that was already hanging by a thread. But as she lay in bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Caleb looked at her. Like she was something precious. Like she mattered. And for the first time in 3 years, Riley allowed herself to wonder what it might be like to not carry her burdens alone. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Miller's Cafe as Riley wiped down tables before opening. Her mind wasn't on her work, though. It was across town at Dorian House where she and Jamie had spent so much time lately. Someone's distracted today, Martha commented, flipping the sign on the door to open. Thinking about your mysterious recluse. Riley felt her cheeks grow warm. He's not my recluse. Martha smiled knowingly. Maybe not, but something's changed. I haven't seen you smile this much since before your parents died. Before Riley could respond, the phone rang. Martha answered it, then held it out. Speak of the devil, it's Caleb Dorian. Riley took the phone, her heart beating a little faster. Hello? Riley. Caleb's voice sounded different, energized, excited. I need to show you something. Can you come over after work? I have a shift at the convenience store until 8, Riley said. After that then, Caleb insisted. It's important. Riley found herself smiling. Okay, but it better be good. I'm giving up sleep for this. When she arrived at Dorian House that evening, the place looked different. Lights blazed from every window, making the mansion look alive in a way it hadn't before. Caleb opened the door before she could knock, his face alight with an energy she'd never seen in him. Come in, come in. He led her quickly through the house to his study, where papers and drawings were spread across every surface. Computer screens displayed technical diagrams and code. "What is all this?" Riley asked, bewildered. "My new project," Caleb explained, his eyes bright with excitement. "After our conversation the other night, I couldn't sleep. You were right. I've been hiding while they lived their lives. So I decided to stop hiding." He picked up a sketch from the desk and handed it to her. "Remember my security system? The one they stole? This is the next generation. Better, faster, smarter." Riley looked at the complex diagram, not understanding the technical details, but understanding completely what it meant. Caleb was creating again. He was coming back to life. "This is amazing," she said, genuinely happy for him. "I've been on the phone with investors all day," Caleb continued. "People I used to know, people who remember what I could do. They're interested, Riley, very interested." "So you're starting a new company?" Riley asked. Caleb nodded, running a hand through his hair, which was standing up in all directions, like he'd been pulling at it in excitement. "Yes, and I want you to be part of it." Riley froze. "What?" "Caleb, I don't know anything about tech or business. I'm a waitress and a convenience store clerk." "You're much more than that," Caleb said seriously. "You're smart, practical, and you see people for who they really are. That's rare, Riley. That's valuable." "I can't just quit my jobs and join your startup fantasy," Riley protested. "I have bills to pay, Jamie to take care of." "I'll pay you twice what you're making now," Caleb said immediately. "And with regular hours, you'll be home more for Jamie." Riley shook her head, feeling overwhelmed. "This is too fast. Yesterday you were a recluse who hadn't left his house in 15 years. Today you're launching a company and offering me a job?" Caleb stepped closer to her, his eyes intense. "I know it seems sudden, but it's been building ever since you knocked on my door. You made me want to live again, Riley. Not just exist, live." The raw honesty in his voice made her breath catch. For a moment they stood there, looking at each other, something electric in the air between them. Then Riley took a step back. "I need to think about this. It's a lot to take in." Caleb nodded, respecting her space. "Of course, take all the time you need." As Riley drove home that night, her mind was spinning. The job offer was tempting. Better pay, regular hours, working, with Caleb every day. But it was also terrifying. What if the company failed? What if working together ruined whatever was growing between them? What if she wasn't good enough? The next day, Riley discussed it with Jamie over breakfast. "You should do it," Jamie said immediately. "It's a way better opportunity than the cafe or the convenience store." "But what if it doesn't work out?" Riley worried. "What if his company fails?" Jamie rolled his eyes. "Then you get another job." "You always do." Riley smiled at her brother's simple logic. "When did you get so smart?" "Around the same time you got so scared of good things happening," Jamie replied, his teenage bluntness hitting home. That afternoon, Riley called Caleb. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll work with you. But I'm keeping my job at the cafe until I'm sure this is going to work." "That's fair," Caleb agreed, his voice warm with happiness. "When can you start?" Within a week, Caleb's new company, Phoenix Security, had office space in the downtown business district. Riley started working as his assistant, helping to organize meetings, maintain schedules, and generally keep things running smoothly while Caleb focused on the technical side. The change in Caleb was remarkable. With each day that passed, he seemed to shed more of the darkness that had surrounded him for 15 years. He was still quiet in crowds, still preferred small groups to large ones, but he was engaging with the world again. One evening, after a successful meeting with investors, Riley found Caleb standing by the office window, looking out at the city. "Lights? Penny for your thoughts," she said, coming to stand beside him. "I was just thinking about how different everything is now," Caleb replied. 6 months ago, I was alone in that house, convinced I'd never leave it again. And then you showed up with soup." Riley laughed. "Martha's soup does have magical qualities." "It wasn't the soup," Caleb said softly, turning to look at her. "It was you, Riley. Your strength, your honesty. The way you never pitied me, never treated me like I was broken." Riley felt her heart beating faster. "You weren't broken, Caleb, just lost for a while." They were standing close now, closer than they had before. Riley could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes, the slight trace of grey at his temples. "Riley," Caleb began, his voice low, "I want to—" The office door swung open, and Jamie bounded in. "Hey, are you guys ready? The movie starts in 30 minutes. The moment broken, Riley stepped away from Caleb, feeling both relieved and disappointed. "Yes, we're ready. Let me just grab my purse." The three of them had fallen into a routine of Thursday night movies, followed by dinner at a small Italian restaurant near the theater. To anyone watching, they might have looked like a family, a thought that both warmed and frightened Riley. As the weeks passed, Phoenix security began to take shape. Caleb's designs were revolutionary, and investors were eager to be part of what they all believed would be a major comeback for tech's most famous recluse. The story of Caleb Dorian's return to the business world began to spread. News articles appeared, speculating about his new company and the reasons for his 15-year disappearance. With the publicity came an unexpected problem. Riley was sorting through mail one morning when she found a letter with no return address. She opened it, thinking it was from a potential client, but instead found a single sheet of expensive stationery with flowing handwriting. "Caleb, I've been following the news about your new venture. It appears congratulations are in order. Perhaps we could meet for dinner to discuss old times and new opportunities." Rebecca Riley stared at the name, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. Rebecca, Caleb's ex-fiancée. The woman who had betrayed him and helped destroy his life. She placed the letter on Caleb's desk without comment, but he noticed her troubled expression. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," Riley lied. "Just tired." Caleb picked up the letter and read it, his face growing hard. Without a word, he tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. "Aren't you curious what she wants?" Riley couldn't help asking. "No," Caleb said firmly. "The past is the past. I'm only interested in the future now." But the past wasn't done with Caleb Dorian. 2 days later, Riley arrived at the office to find a sleek, expensive-looking woman waiting in the reception area. She was beautiful in a polished, perfect way. Designer clothes, flawless makeup, not a hair out of place. "Can I help you?" Riley asked. Though she already had a sinking feeling she knew who this was, the woman gave her a practiced smile. "I'm here to see Caleb. I'm an old friend, Rebecca Winters." Riley felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. So this was her, the woman who had broken Caleb's heart and helped steal his company. "Mr. Dorian isn't available," Riley said coldly, "and he doesn't see people without appointments." Rebecca's smile didn't falter. "Oh, he'll see me. Just tell him I'm here." Before Riley could respond, the elevator doors opened and Caleb stepped out. He stopped dead when he saw Rebecca, his face draining of color. "Rebecca," he said, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "Caleb, darling," Rebecca purred, stepping toward him. "It's been too long. You're looking well. Recluse life. Must agree with you. What do you want?" Caleb asked bluntly. Rebecca's smile faltered slightly at his tone. "To talk. Privately." She glanced meaningfully at Riley. "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of my assistant," Caleb said firmly. Riley saw a flash of something. Anger, surprise, cross Rebecca's perfect features. "Fine," Rebecca said, her voice cooling. "David and I heard about your new security system. We're interested in discussing a partnership." Caleb laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A partnership? With you and David? After what you did?" "Business is business, Caleb," Rebecca replied, smoothly. "What happened between us was unfortunate, but it was 15 years ago. Surely you've moved on by now." Riley watched Caleb's face, saw the muscle working in his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. For a moment, she was afraid he might retreat back into himself, back into the darkness he'd lived in for so long. But then Caleb straightened, his eyes clear and cold. "Yes, I have moved on, which is why I'll never do business with either of you again. Please leave." Rebecca's mask of politeness slipped. "You're making a mistake, Caleb. Our company has resources you can only dream of. We could crush your little startup before it even launches." "You're welcome to try," Caleb replied calmly. Now if there's nothing else, Riley will show you out. Rebecca turned her perfect smile on Riley, though it didn't reach her eyes. So you're the one who dragged him out of his cave. Interesting. I wonder what your angle is. The door is this way, Riley said, refusing to engage. After Rebecca left, Caleb stood motionless in the reception area, his face unreadable. Are you okay? Riley asked, touching his arm gently. He turned to look at her, and the lost look in his eyes made her heart ache. I thought seeing her would destroy me, he admitted. For 15 years, I've imagined that moment. Seeing her, and David again. In my mind, it always ended with me falling apart. But you didn't, Riley said. You stood your ground. A slow smile spread across Caleb's face. I did, didn't I? And do you know why? Riley shook her head. Because I finally have something in my life worth fighting for, he said softly. The intensity in his gaze made Riley's heart race. She knew he wasn't just talking about the company. That night, after Jamie had gone to bed, Riley sat on their small balcony, thinking about the day's events. Seeing Rebecca had been a shock, not just because of who she was, but because she represented a part of Caleb's life Riley knew nothing about, the successful, confident man he'd been before his world fell apart. For the first time, Riley wondered if she really belonged in Caleb's new life. She was a small-town girl with no college education, no special skills, just a determination to keep going no matter what. And now that Caleb was returning to his old world, a world of wealth and power and beautiful women like Rebecca, would there still be a place for her? The next day at work, Caleb seemed distracted. Several times, Riley caught him looking at her with a thoughtful expression, only to quickly look away when she noticed. Finally, at the end of the day, he asked her to stay late. There's something I need to discuss with you. Riley's stomach clenched with anxiety. Was this it? Was he going to tell her that now that his company was taking off, he didn't need her anymore? After everyone else had left, Caleb led her into his office and closed the door. I've been thinking about what happened yesterday, with Rebecca. Riley nodded, not trusting herself to speak. It made me realize something important, Caleb continued. I've spent 15 years hiding from the world because I was afraid of being hurt again. But in doing that, I was also hiding from any chance of happiness. He moved closer to her, his blue eyes intense. Riley, you changed that. You showed me that opening the door, literally and figuratively, was worth the risk. That connecting with people again, with you and Jamie, was worth any pain that might come. Riley felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Caleb, let me finish, he said gently. I know you have your own fears, your own reasons for keeping people at a distance, but I'm asking you to take a chance on me, on us. He took her hand in his touch sending warmth through her entire body. I'm falling in love with you, Riley Monroe. And I hope, you might be feeling something for me too. Riley's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Everything he said was true. She did have feelings for him, feelings that had been growing stronger every day. But she was also terrified. What about Rebecca? She asked, her voice small. She's from your world. You're just the strongest, most beautiful, most honest person I've ever known, Caleb interrupted. Rebecca was never from my world. She just wanted what I could give her. He smiled. You showed up at my door with soup and changed my life without wanting anything in return. Riley couldn't help laughing at the simplicity of it. That soup again. Will you give us a chance? Caleb asked, his voice serious now. I know it's complicated. I know you have Jamie to think about. But I care about him too, Riley. I care about both of you. Riley looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd been searching for without even knowing it. Understanding, respect, and yes, love. The kind of love that didn't demand or take, but gave freely. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. I'll give us a chance. Caleb's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Gently, he pulled her closer and kissed her, a soft, tender kiss that promised more to come. When they broke apart, Riley felt as if something had shifted inside her, as if a door in her own heart had finally opened. But their moment of happiness was short-lived. The next morning, Riley arrived at work to find Caleb in an emergency meeting with the company's lawyers. "What's going on?" she asked when he finally emerged, his face grim. "David and Rebecca filed a patent claim," Caleb explained. "They're saying, my new security system is based on proprietary technology from our old company, technology they own." "But that's not true," Riley protested. "You developed this from scratch. I've watched you work on it for months." "The truth may not matter," Caleb said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "They have money, lawyers, and connections. If they can tie us up in court long enough, investors will get nervous and pull out." "What are we going to do?" Riley asked. Caleb's eyes hardened with determination. "Fight back. I didn't come this far to let them win again." Over the next few weeks, the legal battle consumed Caleb's time and energy. Riley watched with growing concern as he pushed himself to the breaking point, working late into the night, sometimes not sleeping at all. One evening, she found him in the office at midnight, surrounded by legal documents and technical drawings. "You need to rest," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I can't," Caleb replied, his voice ragged with exhaustion. If I slip up even once, they'll take everything." Again. "Caleb," Riley said firmly, turning his chair to face her. "Look at me. Are you doing this for the company? Or to prove something to them?" The question caught him off guard. I don't know anymore." Riley knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. "You already won, Caleb. The moment you opened that door and let me in, you won. The moment you decided to create again, to live again, you won." "But if they destroy the company, then you'll build another one," Riley interrupted. "Or do something else entirely. The company isn't what matters, Caleb. What matters is that you're not hiding anymore." Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the truth in her words. Slowly, the tension drained from his body. "How did you get so wise?" he asked with a tired smile. "Lots of practice picking up the pieces," Riley replied. "Now come on, you're coming home with me. Jamie's making his famous burnt spaghetti, and you're going to eat it and tell him it's delicious." That night, in Riley's small apartment, with Jamie chattering about school and the spaghetti only slightly charred, Caleb felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Looking at Riley across the table, her face animated as she laughed at something Jamie said, he realized she was right. No matter what happened with the company, with David and Rebecca, with the legal battle, he had already won the most important fight, the fight to reclaim his life, his heart, and no one could take that away from him again. 3 months passed, and spring turned to summer. The legal battle with David and Rebecca's company dragged on, but Caleb refused to let it consume him the way it might have before. Instead, he focused on what mattered, his relationship with Riley and Jamie, and the steady growth of Phoenix security despite the challenges. Riley watched the transformation in Caleb with a sense of wonder and pride. The lost, broken man who had answered his door that rainy day was gone. In his place was someone strong, determined, and capable of joy. Real joy that showed in his eyes and his smile. Their relationship had deepened in ways Riley hadn't thought possible. Caleb had become not just her boss and her boyfriend, but her partner in every sense of the word. He supported her dreams, listened to her fears, and made her feel valued in a way no one ever had before. As for Jamie, he had bloomed under Caleb's attention. His grades had improved dramatically, and he talked constantly about studying computer science in college, a dream that now seemed possible thanks to Caleb's promise to help with tuition when the time came. One warm evening in July, Riley and Caleb sat on the porch of Dorian House watching the sunset. The old mansion had changed too, no longer dark and shuttered, but open to light and life. Caleb had renovated several rooms and was talking about more improvements. "I've been thinking," Caleb said, his voice casual but with an undercurrent of nervousness. "This house is too big for just me." Riley nodded, sipping her iced tea. "It always was. That's part of why it felt so empty." "I was wondering," Caleb continued, watching her face carefully, "if you and Jamie might consider moving in. There's plenty of space and it's closer to Jamie's school, and are you asking us to live with you?" Riley interrupted, her heart suddenly racing. Caleb took her hand. Yes, I am. I love having you both here. And when you're not here, the house feels empty again. Riley bit her lip, thinking. It was a huge step, one that would fundamentally change their relationship, their lives. You don't have to answer right away, Caleb added quickly. Take some time to think about it. Talk to Jamie. But Riley shook her head. I don't need time. The answer is yes. Caleb's face broke into a smile of pure happiness. Really? Really, Riley confirmed. But I have one condition. Anything. Caleb said eagerly. I keep paying my way, Riley insisted. Maybe not equal shares since that's impossible, but something fair based on what I make. I need to contribute. Caleb started to argue but saw the determination in her eyes. This was important to her, to maintain her independence, her strength. It was part of why he loved her. We'll figure something out, he agreed. Something that works for both of us. 2 weeks later, Riley and Jamie moved into Dorian House. Jamie took over a suite of rooms on the 3rd floor, immediately filling it with his books, computer equipment, and the treasured comic collection that had grown considerably since Caleb came into their lives. Riley had been more hesitant about which space to claim. Part of her felt she should maintain her own room, separate from Caleb's, at least at first. But the pull between them was too strong, the love too real to deny. In the end, she moved her few belongings into Caleb's master suite, her simple clothes hanging next to his in the walk-in closet, her drugstore perfume sitting beside his expensive cologne on the bathroom counter. Life settled into a new rhythm. Caleb and Riley worked together during the day, building Phoenix Security into a respected name in the industry, despite the ongoing legal troubles. Evenings and weekends were family time, dinners together, movies in the home theater, long talks on the porch. For the first time since her parents died, Riley felt like she had a real home again, a place where she belonged, with people who loved her. But shadows from the past still lingered. On a bright August morning, Riley arrived at the office to find an urgent message from their lawyer. The patent dispute with David and Rebecca's company had taken a new turn. They were offering a settlement. They would drop the patent claim if Caleb agreed to sell them the rights to his new security system. It's a trap, Riley said immediately, when Caleb showed her the offer. If you sell them the system, they'll just shelve it like they did with your original designs. They don't want to use it. They just want to make sure you can't. Caleb nodded grimly. I know. But our lawyers think they might win the patent dispute. If that happens, we lose everything anyway. So what are you going to do? Caleb's jaw set in a determined line. I'm going to talk to them. Face to face. Last time, Riley felt a surge of fear. Caleb, no, you can't trust them. I don't trust them, Caleb assured her. But I need to look them in the eyes when I make my decision. I need to know I'm not running away from this, from them, ever again. The meeting was set for the following day at a neutral location, a conference room in their lawyer's office building. Riley insisted on coming along, despite Caleb's concerns. I'm not letting you face them alone, she said firmly. Not again. When they entered the conference room, David and Rebecca were already there, looking polished and confident. David was older than Riley had expected, with silver at his temples and expensive glasses perched on his nose. Rebecca looked the same. As before, beautiful, cold, perfect. Caleb, David greeted, standing to shake hands. It's been a long time. Caleb ignored the outstretched hand. Not long enough. David's smile faltered slightly. He glanced at Riley. And this is? Riley Monroe, Caleb said. My partner, in every sense of the word. Riley saw Rebecca's eyes narrow at that, a flash of something, jealousy, crossing her perfect features. Let's get to the point, Caleb continued, taking a seat across from them. You're offering to drop the patent claim if I sell you my system. That's right, David confirmed. For a very fair price, I might add. You'd be well compensated. And what happens to the system after I sell it to you? David and Rebecca exchanged a quick glance. We'd integrate it into our existing product line, of course, David said smoothly. where it would complement our current offerings. Don't lie to me, Caleb said quietly. Not again, you have no intention of using my system. You just want to make sure I can't. Rebecca leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet. Caleb, don't be paranoid. That's what drove you into isolation for 15 years. Don't make the same mistake again. Riley felt a surge of anger. Don't pretend you care about his well-being, she snapped. Not after what you did to him. Rebecca's eyes flashed. And what exactly do you think we did to him? He was the one who walked away, who abandoned everything we built together because he couldn't handle a little competition. Competition? Caleb repeated, his voice deadly quiet. Is that what you call stealing my designs, betraying my trust, having an affair behind my back while I worked 18-hour days to build our company? David at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. The past is the past, Caleb. We're here to talk business. No, Caleb said, standing up. We're here because you're still afraid of me, afraid of what I can create, afraid I'll finally show the world who you really are. Don't flatter yourself. Rebecca scoffed. Your little startup is hardly a threat to us. Then why try to shut it down, Riley challenged. Why the patent claim? Why the settlement offer? David adjusted his glasses. This is getting us nowhere. Do you want to sell or not, Caleb? Caleb looked at them both, the people who had once been the center of his world, who had betrayed him in the worst possible way. Then he looked at Riley, whose strength and honesty had brought him back to life. No, he said simply. I'm not selling. Not now. Not ever. Then we'll see you in court, David replied, gathering his papers. And we'll win. Maybe, Caleb agreed. But even if you do, even if you take this system like you took the last one, I'll just create something else. Something better. Because that's what I do. I create. I build. All you know how to do is steal and destroy. He took Riley's hand. Let's go, we're done here. As they walked out, Riley squeezed his hand. Are you okay? Caleb smiled down at her, his eyes clear and certain. I've never been better. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. The story of Caleb Dorian's comeback, and the legal battle trying to stop it, leaked to the press. A major technology magazine ran a feature article about Caleb's return from seclusion, his new innovations, and the patent dispute with his former partners. Public opinion turned sharply against David and Rebecca's company. Tech forums buzzed with discussions about their business practices. Former employees came forward with stories that supported Caleb's version of events from 15 years ago. Suddenly, the legal battle wasn't just a matter for the courts. It was playing out in the court of public opinion. And David and Rebecca were losing. One morning in September, Riley arrived at the office to find Caleb on the phone with their lawyer, his expression changing from shock to disbelief to cautious joy. What is it? She asked when he hung up. They dropped the patent claim, Caleb said, sounding stunned. Completely, no conditions, no settlement, nothing. They just withdrew it. Why would they do that? Riley wondered. Their stock is down, 30% since the story broke, Caleb explained. Major clients are threatening to pull out. Apparently the board of directors forced them to end the dispute before it did any more damage. Riley laughed in relieved disbelief. So we won just like that? We won, Caleb confirmed, pulling her into his arms. Just like that. That night they celebrated with a special dinner at home. Jamie set the table with the fancy dishes they never used, and Caleb opened a bottle of champagne for himself and Riley, sparkling cider for Jamie. To Phoenix Security, Caleb toasted, raising his glass. May it rise higher than anyone thought possible. To second chances, Riley added, her eyes meeting Caleb's over the rim of her glass. To family, Jamie said simply, looking at both of them with affection. Later, after Jamie had gone upstairs, Caleb and Riley stood on the porch looking at the stars. The night was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze, the scent of late summer flowers hanging in the air. I've been thinking, Caleb said, his voice soft but steady. Dangerous, Riley teased. Last time you said that, we ended up moving in. Caleb laughed. This is different, or maybe not so different. He took a deep breath. Riley Monroe, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Meeting you, or rather you showing up at my door with soup, changed everything. Riley's heart began to race as Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I know it hasn't been that long," he continued, "but when you know, you know. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He opened the box to reveal a ring, not flashy or ostentatious, but elegant and beautiful, perfect for Riley. "Will you marry me?" Caleb asked, his voice tender but strong, without a trace of the uncertainty that had haunted him for so long. Riley looked at him, this man who had been broken but found the courage to piece himself back together, this man who loved her brother like his own, this man who had opened his heart when she knocked on his door. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy filling her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger, and as he pulled her close for a kiss, Riley knew that this was where she belonged, not just in this house but in his arms, in his life. The wedding was planned for the following spring, a small ceremony in the gardens of Dorian House with just their closest friends. Jamie would walk Riley down the aisle. Martha from the cafe would bake the cake. The house that had been Caleb's prison for 15 years would become the place where his new life officially began. One evening, a few weeks after the engagement, Riley found Caleb in his studio. He was working on a new drawing, a portrait of the three of them, Caleb, Riley, and Jamie, sitting on the porch laughing together. "It's beautiful," Riley said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Almost done," Caleb replied, adding a final touch to Jamie's smile. "There. What do you think?" Riley looked at the drawing, at the joy and love captured in every line. "I think it's perfect." Caleb set down his pencil and turned to face her. "You know, for 15 years, I thought my life was over. I thought the best I could do was hide away from the world, from people, from pain." He took her hands in his. "And then you knocked on my door. You with your soup and your honesty and your strength. You who weren't afraid of the rumors or the darkness or the man hiding inside." "I needed the tip," Riley joked, blinking back. "Tears," Caleb laughed. "Well, I'd say delivering that soup was the best paying job you ever had." "Definitely," Riley agreed, looking down at her engagement ring. "Though I didn't expect quite such a big tip." "I love you, Riley Monroe," Caleb said, his voice serious now, "more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." "I love you." "Too," Riley replied, "enough to knock on doors that everyone else was afraid of." As they stood there in the studio, surrounded by Caleb's art, the talent he'd reclaimed, the joy he'd rediscovered, Riley thought about all the twists and turns that had led them here, the loss of her parents, Caleb's betrayal and isolation, the rainy day delivery that had changed everything. Life hadn't been easy for either of them. They'd both faced heartbreak and hardship. They'd both built walls to protect themselves from more pain, but they'd also both found the courage to open doors, literal and figurative, to let someone new in, to risk pain for the chance at happiness, to believe in the possibility of love after loss. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Jamie called from downstairs, asking what they wanted on their pizza for movie night. The sound of laughter echoed through the house that had been silent for too long. Caleb smiled at Riley, his eyes full of all the tomorrows they would share. "Ready for movie night?" Riley nodded, taking his hand. "Ready for everything." Together they walked out of the studio and down the stairs to where Jamie was waiting. A family, a future, a door finally, fully opened. The end.